Good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, or good evening, or good night. This is Jen at JensArtyInclinations, a place to create, share, and play.
Hello there, everyone. I picked up 3 of these. They're sketchbooks, mixed media page sketchbooks. And so I thought I'd play and decorate the covers. So I'm doing it 3 different ways. And I thought you might like to join me. I thought I'd just turn the camera on and you can see, what happens in my harebrained process. All right, so the first one, as you saw, I just grabbed a sanding block to sand it back and give it a little bit more purchase for whatever I was going to put on top. And the first thing I'm doing on this one is I'm using gesso or gesso, and it's just a white one. Then I've got this fabulous little clay roller. I've got a few of them, and I decided that I'd see what happened if I rolled that through, and I was quite pleasantly surprised that I got a nice pattern. Now, the big tip obviously is make sure you dry them well in between whatever steps you're going to do. So that was me just using the heat dryer. But if you do that, make sure it keeps moving. Otherwise you'll bubble up whatever your material is, like the glue or the gesso or the moulding paste, etc. So the next thing I did was I had cut out some circles and I kept the relief piece, like the outside bit of it, and I'm using that just to put some circles coming off the edge of the cover with some moulding paste, so they've got a little bit of height. Then I decided, that worked quite well. So I thought I'd have a go with just some folded sheets of paper to mask off and see if I could put another piece of moulding paste in that bottom corner. And actually it worked quite well. Now, with moulding paste, it's like spack filler. Oftentimes you'll be quite surprised how much you'll use. So it was actually quite a bit that I ended up putting on this corner to get it to build up properly. And you just kind of keep smushing it down. It really is, if you've ever spacked a hole on your wall, it really is the same kind of process. And I tend to use, what do you call them? Those spatulas that are a little bit harder, but there's flexible plastic. This time I'm actually using a bit of a rubber silicone tip. And honestly, that still worked just as well, but I do find that something just a little bit stiffer does tend to work better. But look, it's all much of a muchness. I'm not wanting these to be perfect and pristine, so I'm not too fussed on it. So then I, just thought about some different patterns that I could have that might just work on the cover, because I had this beautiful butterfly and I wanted things around them. So I had these lovely little chevrons. Took me forever to work out what I was going to put on the cover, because it's a little bit different for me. I don't normally kind of do this kind of work. And I mean, I'd love to do more of it. I would like to play a bit more with doing, that steampunk kind of finishes. That's really good grammar, Jen. But you know what I mean, that you can actually get on pieces. I'm trying to play a little bit just to add a few more things into my repertoire. I think steampunk artists are so talented. That vision that they've got and that image that they can actually create, I just love it. It's not something I'm very good at, but, they're very good at doing often these chipboard and 3-dimensional pieces. So this is my little nod to that kind of thing. Now, I'll be covering all of this over, but this is just getting the base pieces down for the pattern. Now, as that wasn't completely dry, and I thought, I'm a bit bored with that, I decided to keep playing with it and put some more impressions in that corner piece. And really, I'm just mucking about. So here, the top is sort of starting to set, but underneath hasn't set yet. So that's why I'm still able to make these impressions in it without making a huge mess. And then I went, no, don't like that. So I sort of patted that out again and then did something completely different again. I liked the circles on the top of this mushroom and the effect that they made. So I put some of those in around it. And then I went back to the first circles I did. And I actually liked the impression that they put in with the moulding paste a little bit drier. So that's something that I've learnt, you know, for later on. Sometimes it might be better to let it set a little bit if you're going to pop an impression in it after you've put it down. Makes sense, right? Because it's less liquid and it's got a little bit more substance in it. Anyway, I love this butterfly. It was actually a gift with purchase. Gorgeous. I think it's just beautiful. I believe it was from Witchcraft You Do that they tucked, you know, a little freebie in, which was just beautiful. Now, once that was all dry, I did let it dry for quite some time. I think I did it in the morning and let it dry in the afternoon, and I had given it a bit of a boost with the heat gun to start with. But once that was dry, I've then painted it all over with black gesso, black gesso. So I love black gesso. I just love the finish on it. I love the fact that it can make my white gesso grey, which I use a lot. Yeah, I don't know, quite funny. Sometimes in my journals, I'll just use the black gesso just to literally paint over a whole page. So look, there's the moulding paste and the black gesso that I use, just so that you know what I used there. And then just dried it off and made sure that that was really, really dry. And I love how it finishes because it gives a really beautiful matte finish. Now, the butterfly, the reason that it was that blue was because I'd already covered it with some wax. And so therefore I could just rub the gesso off it, just so that you know. Alrighty. Speaking of grey gesso, that's what I did next. So this is the white gesso, just with the tiniest touch of the black gesso in it, just off the brush, literally, which gave me a lovely grey. And again, I just covered the whole cover. Now, I was quite lazy with my first two, and I did the covers while they were still attached to the spiral binder bounding on, you know, that spiral thing on the edge there. And I did remove the last one, and honestly, you should do that because it's easier. But here again, just putting some patterns in. So some chevrons and some little lines. And then what I wanted to do was I just wanted to go around the edges ever so slightly, just to give it a really subtle border. You know, it's just nice when you give that little bit of a worn look around the edges. Then I had a lovely paper roll. So I used that to create some circles. I love putting circles in and stencils in to work. So look, this is more of a painty mixed media cover. So yeah, fun through my little stencils. And I really didn't want a perfect impression. I wanted it to kind of be fading off and to have that kind of a look about it, which I think I achieved quite well. And you'll see I just keep going around the edge. So I just keep building that up. And that works quite well here, which is quite nice. There we go, all the way down. And that is black. So I've got the black against the grey. And as I said, the grey was made grey only by the black that was left over on my brush. So that was very, very nice and easy. So I don't know if you can pick it up on the camera there, but you can just see that there's a little bit of an edge, and that just starts to give it a bit of depth, a bit of a finish, it feels like a subtle border to the cover. Now, this was probably the easiest cover, I think, that I did, because there wasn't much mucking about. There was just chucking things down, just doing a bit of painty. It was all in the one colour. It was all black and white and grey. So lots of, what am I trying to say? It was just an easier piece for me to put together. Sometimes if you're struggling, limit your colour palette. So here I'm literally doing black and white. So I've still got the contrast of the darker black on top of the lighter grey, but essentially this is black and white. And another trick, if you're having trouble with your composition, get out your iPhone or your phone, whatever, you use nowadays, your iPad and so forth. Take a photo and then change it to black and white. So there's usually some kind of a setting that you can either take the photo in black and white or you can change it afterwards in black and white. Have a play, press buttons and screens, and then you'll get a really clear idea of what the composition looks like. So black and white's good to go back to. And I thought that this had to say play. So that's what I've got there. And I just used stamps to actually do that. Now that this other cover dried with the butterfly, I wanted to wax it. Now, I hadn't done this at all before. They're all new to me. All I knew was you could do it with your fingers or a brush and little circular motions usually, and sometimes you can wipe it off and put it back on, So I'm really playing, really just mucking about. This first one is an antique style wax. So theoretically, it's got two colours in it. So it has a brown base with the blue top. So that's why I was trying to wipe through it. And you do get some contrast, but I'm obviously doing something wrong. So it didn't work as well for me as what it has for other people. I know that also you are better to warm up the wax before you apply it. So that's why I'm actually taking it off a palette. The reason is because then I can kind of smoosh it around and just warm up the wax a little bit, just swirling it with the brush and then applying it, and you'll find it will definitely apply a lot more smoothly. Now, I did find it was a bit of a difference with wiping it, and I wasn't too fussed when it went on the butterfly as well, because I actually then wiped it off, but I knew that I'd get a little bit of edging around it. So again, it just gives that a little bit of a pretend border. Now, all I'm doing then is I'm adding the vintage gold. This is just the normal metallic wax from Art Alchemy, and Blue Lagoon. Blue Lagoon is the light colour of the butterfly, and vintage gold is just a nice gold that I liked that particular gold. And I decided that because I just wanted to grab the pieces that were sitting up, that I would just use a cloth. So I'm doing a little bit around the butterfly as well, but I wanted to do the chevrons and I wanted to do that little extra piece, have a little play. And as you can see, you can build up. So you can leave it for a little bit and then add some more wax on top. You can kind of get it to that point in about, 10 to 15 minutes if you really want to build up on that colour. If you want to mix your colours a bit, you don't need them to actually dry, obviously. So I did a little bit of both. So I'm kind of just wanting it to be random, rustic, really feeling like it's weathered already, even though it does still look, quite striking. So yeah, I had a bit of fun using the gold and the blue on the butterfly and just getting a little bit of contrast on that butterfly. And then I found that it was quite nice using just a touch of that Blue Lagoon on the little circles. Remember the circles that I did with the moulding paste? So I did those with the Blue Lagoon. I did the bottom left with the Blue Lagoon, and now I am literally just playing and blending. So I'm applying, rubbing a little bit in with the cloth and then applying again. So I'm just building and blending. So that was how I did it, and I loved how it turned out. Now at the end, apparently these will dry completely hard. I wasn't patient enough, so I did actually end up sealing them with a decoupage finishing thing that I don't have it in the bottle anymore, so I couldn't show you, but it's a decoupage finishing solution and it just dries clear. So I sometimes use that if I don't like the feel of my materials at the end. I'll sometimes just pop that across the top. This was my test go that I used on the wax. So I just thought, I was doing that at the same time, so you could just see that. Nothing I'm particularly thrilled about, but, fun to play with anyway. And then this is what I did in the end. See, I actually carefully took the covers out of the spine. So if you're very careful, you can actually do that without losing the shape of the spine, and just gently take them out one at a time, and then you'll be able to put them back in again. So that's the back cover, and then you twirl the front cover around. So this is how, if you were doing your own book, you put the covers back to back and you put them in together, and then the actual finish is inside the spine. So that's, why I did it that way. But you'll notice so much easier not having to get around the spine. I didn't grunge up my spine, and my metal binding comb, that's it. I knew I'd remember eventually. So yeah, didn't have to worry about grunging that up. I could completely cover it. Now, once I put my white gesso down on this one, I then use my fingers to really smooth it out. And here I'm just putting across a matte medium. Any old matte medium will do, doesn't matter what it is. And that is something that can be used as a top coat and to stick things down. So it's great for collaging. Now, I did need to use a bit of fabric glue for the first piece in this, but there you go. I just built it up as a collage for the final one. So you can see all the pieces building up there. And that was my final cover. So really, they're 3 different looks, but all from the same thing to begin with. And this, I just used watercolour to go around the edge of this one. So similar to how I did the wax, but on this one, I actually edged it in the watercolour. And look, it's very subtle, very hard to see on camera, but in the final cover, it actually did make a difference. And because it was all collaged, I wanted to put some matte medium across the top of the whole piece, just so that everything stayed in place nicely. And that worked really, really well. So here I am, just popping it back in very, very carefully, putting the last few in. It's a little bit fiddly, however it does work. Just pushing the comb together just to make sure it stays. And voila, there's the collage cover. So we had a waxy 3D one, we had a painty gesso one, and then we had a collage one.
I'd love it if you could leave me a comment below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw today. And of course, please subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you next time. And in the meantime, keep creating. Enjoy!